Hello dear children, welcome you all to our class. The lesson that we are dealing with is Weathering the Storm in Ersama. As we all know that this lesson was written by Mander. And in this last classes we have seen that Prashant, who was an youngster, went to visit one of his friends in Ersama. Unexpectedly he happened to be in the flood, heavy storm and rain, and he need to spend over 2 days in the friend's family in the roof of their house. And on the third day, somehow when the rain reduced, he managed to swim across to reach his village. The name of his village is Kalikuda. We have seen that. And on the way, he happened to see so many disastrous things, but still then he wanted to know whether his family was safe there or not. Once he reached his village Kalikuda, he could see that the place where his house was, only some remnants or remains of the house just hang around the branches of the tree, and he felt so dull and sorrowful. But when he reached the Red Cross Society shelter, he could see all the beloved ones of his family members. And we see that there, once he reached there, he thought of just taking responsibility for doing some voluntary work in the shelter. Okay, around 2,000, 5,000 people were there in the shelter, and he need to do something for the people all over there. So what happened, along with the other youngsters and other adults, he volunteered to bring rice for the people, and also he managed to get food from the helicopters. You have seen that he made the small children lie on the ground with empty vessels on the stomach to attract the helicopters, giving them a news that they were starving, isn't it? Only once the helicopter one came there. And after seeing the sight, daily they used to get food parcels dropped from the helicopters. Okay, and also we see that with the assistance of this Prashant, or giving direction, he made a group of youngsters to do some voluntary work in cleaning the shelter as well as for tending the injured. Okay, and so we have seen that once he reached the shelter, once he understood that there is someone to manage the affairs of the shelter, because a lot about more people were living in the shelter. They need to be kept hygienic and also make sure that they all get their food. And after the coming of Prashant, we see that after 4 days of the flood affected area, these people could eat sumptuous rice. Okay, so let's see what happens next. Prashant found that a large number of children had been orphaned. He brought them together and put them up in a polythene sheet shelter for them. Women were mobilized to look after them, while the men secured food and materials for the shelter. So once what happened, after cleaning, after doing the cleaning work of the shelter and providing food and looking after the injured and the needed people, now he thought of the orphans. Who are orphans? The children who lost their father and mother, parents. So now he focused his attention, that he came to know that a large number of children had been orphaned in the super cyclone. They lost their parents, they lost their mother, they lost their father. So definitely you can just imagine the sorrow that these children were facing in the shelter, isn't it? No one to look after them. They were sorrowful, disappointed. So what happened? Now he focused his attention on the children who lost their parents in the flood. They should be comforted. They should be given solace. They should be protected. So what happened? In order to make them aware that they are not alone, he assigned, or he had sent some women of that shelter to look after these children. He assigned women to look after them. He mobilized. Mobilize means what? He just made them go and see the affairs of these children. He started assigning duties. Already we have seen that he collected the youngsters and he gave some duty to the adult men of the shelter. Now he is giving duties to some women folks of this shelter to look after the children who are disappointed, who are orphaned. And also by the time when he assigned some ladies to look after children, he also assigned some men to go and find food for the children. And also not only for the children, for all the people. Already we have seen that somehow they managed a merchant to take some rice from his shop. He cooked and gave them food, isn't it? So likewise, men started distributed towards different places to collect food materials. Whereas the women, the ladies were given the duty to look after the children who are all alone. Then, as the week passed, Prashant was quick to recognize that the women and the children were sinking deeper and deeper in their grief. He persuaded the women to start working in the food-for-work program started by an NGO. And for the children, he organized sports events. He himself loved to play cricket, and so he organized cricket matches for the children. Prashant engaged with other volunteers in helping the widows and children to pick their broken pieces of life. The initial government plan was to set up institutions for the orphans and widows. However, this step was successfully resisted, as it was felt that in such institution, children would grow up without love and widows would suffer from stigma and loneliness. Prashant's group believed orphans should be resettled in their own community itself, possibly in new foster families made up of childless widows and children without adult care. So now what happened here is the next thing that was taken by this Prashant is to boost people. What is it, boosting people? Here we see that as the week passed, Prashant was quick to recognize that women and children were sinking deeper and deeper in grief. Why? You know that so many ladies or so many women lost their children, and so many children lost their parents. So, day after another, they may be thinking about the lost ones, and they are putting themselves into greater pain in life, and that is going to adversely affect the life of the people. Okay? So, what he did, in order to divert their attention from this sort of disappointments and sorrowful things, we see that Prashant was assigning some duties and works for this group of people. There were a lot of widows. Widows means who lost husband, who lost the entire family, and they may be alone, and children will be there. So what he did, he just made these ladies or women to go and work in where? Here we say that work in the food-for-work program started by NGO. NGO is non-governmental organization. So they started just like community kitchen. They are just cooking together for all the people in the shelter. So he just boosted them. Just go and help. You'll just forget about the grief, the pain that you have in your mind. Just get along with others. Otherwise, what will happen? The widows will put themselves into greater pain. And that's why he just sent these ladies to work in a food-for-work program started by an NGO. And what about the children? He allotted these children some time to play. Play what? Cricket. You know that children always very love to play cricket. He also joined them. Okay? So let's play cricket, and he just bought some materials just like, taking some wooden things and shaping it just like a bat and ball. Somehow they managed to give time for the children to forget about the lost ones in their life. To rejuvenate themselves, he made them play cricket. He organized sports events for the children. See how active and energized this Prashant is, isn't it? With the coming about this Prashant, otherwise can you imagine that if Prashant was not coming from Ersama to this Kalikuda, what will be the life of these people will be like? They'll be staying in what? Ugliness, an unhygienic situation. They won't be getting food properly, isn't it? They will be disappointed, and many lives will lost even in that shelter too. But now people started getting boosted. Okay, even the children were given some time to play cricket. Then we see that another thing that he did is when he just intimated that these widows and orphans should be resettled. What was the first plan taken by the government? The government just thought of just starting what? Orphanages and old age homes. Orphanages for orphans, children who lost the family, parents, and old ages and destitute homes for the older women who lost their family. But we see that the youngsters who volunteered to keep these people in a safer place was not ready to start an orphanage or an old age home. Why? Because you know that children who grow up in orphanage will not get the love and affection and the compassion once they experience from their parents. They are going to get devoid of the love, care, compassion, kindness, mercy So he wanted the children to experience all these things just like as if they were living with their parents. So what they did? They decided to keep the children in their own community. On the other side, what we see, there is talking about the widows. If these widows were resettled in an old age home or a destitute home, what will be there? They also would suffer from stigma and loneliness. This stigma means disgrace. No one to appreciate, no one to always, in the family, children will cheer up the situations. Okay? They may be thinking about their children, they may be thinking about their husbands, they may be thinking about the dear ones in their family members if they are resettled in a destitute home. Isn't it? So what was the intention of this Prashant and his youngsters, volunteers, is they wanted to resettle these orphans and widows in their own community itself. How? Here it says that here he just introduced about foster families. What is foster families? Families who adopt children. You know that now in this present situation of Kalikuda or Ersama, whatever, many lives were taken by the flood, the super cyclone. So many children are there who lost their parents, and so many parents were there who lost their children. So he thought of the idea, why can't we give these orphan children to the childless parents? And likewise, the children who lost their parents can get a new parent, as well as the parents who lost their child will get a new child. Exchanging. Okay? Taking a child, giving one parent. So likewise, that is a very good idea given by this Prashant and his team to find out foster families to look out the children. And these children will be orphan. They can go and live with a new family, and in that family already they have lost their children. Okay? So likewise, widows who are childless will get a child, and children without parents will get parents too. They are starting foster families in their own community. They can start a new life full of love, happiness, compassion, care for each other, and no one will feel like loneliness. No one will feel like disappointed. They will love each other because both the children as well as the parents have lost their dear ones, and they may be longing for to avoid this loneliness in their life. So this was a very good idea put forth by Prashant and his team. Okay? So foster families means a family that provides custody of guardianship for children whose parents are dead or unable to look after them. Anyhow, this was a very good idea. You know that in Western countries, even though some families, even though they have children, they used to adopt from the orphanages to give a life, because they know that children need to grow with love. They won't bother whether they have 4 or 5 children of their own, but still then they show compassion to another child by adopting a 6th one or a 3rd one. And they will all live like family. They won't consider this adopted child as an outsider. They will consider this adopted one as their own. And they will look after them, give all privileges in their life. That is one greatest blessing. But that was not popularly seen in our country or in our areas. We haven't seen. But in Western countries, that is normal. That people, even though they have children, they go to adopt. That means their intention is to give love and care for one more, despondent life. To give hand to support a life who is all alone. Okay? So, here we see that with foster families, this Prashant as well as his team is building up a new life for the ones who lost the children as well as for the children who lost their families. Now, coming to the last paragraph of the text, it is 6 months after the devastation of the super cyclone. This time Prashant's wounded spirit had been healed simply because he had no time to bother about his own pain. His handsome, youthful face is what the widows and orphan children of his village seek out most in the darkest hour of grief. So what we see here is now it's going to be 6 months after what? After the super cyclone. You may be remembering the date. When it happened? 1999 October 27. Do you remember? So now It's October, November, December, January, February, March, April. Now it's going to be the month of April, that is 6 months after the super cyclone occurred in Ersama, a coastal town that gave away the hope and the life of many. And we know that Prashant also lost his mother long back, and he may be wounded by the loss, the disappointments that he has in his life about losing his mother. Now here it says that after 6 months of the disaster, Prashant came out of the grief of losing his mother. Okay, so what happened? Because how he forgot about the pain of his lost mother? Because all throughout these 6 months, he was fully engaged in building up a new community in his village. What was the name of his village? Kalikuda. Isn't it? From Ersama, on his way to Kalikuda, he had seen the dead bodies floating on water. He had seen the most disastrous sights in his life. Isn't it? And also he had seen the women and children weeping for having lost their dear ones in the family. So now, Prashant, who was strenuously working hard to bring up a new life for many widows and children, forgot about all his sorrows, forgot about all his grief. He could able to come up in life. And also here we see that all the widows and orphans looked up to him, looked up to this Prashant whenever they needed a help, whenever they needed an assistance in times of tribulation, in times of disappointments, struggle. They only looked for one face. Whose face was that? The face of Prashant. Prashant has become a superhero after the super cyclone in Ersama. Okay, so I hope you understood the lesson. And here we see that Prashant, by giving a life to a lot of people, he again learned to have a smile and a sort of satisfaction in life. Okay, so that's all about weathering the storm in Ersama. Just go through your textbook 3-4 times. Try to understand the lesson. Okay, I think you could get well with the lesson. Have a great day. God bless you. Thank you.